Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. Have mercy upon me, and hear my prayer. Psalms 4 verse 1. In this verse, David calls out to God in a heartfelt plea, seeking divine attention and intervention. The words express a personal appeal, not just for deliverance, but for the assurance of God's righteousness and mercy. This verse is a profound reflection of David's trust in God's character and his willingness to respond to the cries of his people. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. David begins with a direct plea for God to hear him, emphasizing that his call is not based on his own merit, but on God's righteousness. By calling God the God of my righteousness, David acknowledges that his right standing before God is not from his own works, but from God's grace and faithfulness. It is a recognition that God is the source of all righteousness, and it is in God alone that David finds the strength to face the trials of life. This phrase invites the believer to call upon God in their time of need, with the understanding that God's righteousness covers them, granting them access to His mercy and intervention. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. David remembers a past experience where God responded to his distress by giving him relief, growth, and enlargement. The word enlarged here suggests that God brought David out of a narrow place of suffering into a spacious place of freedom and blessing. This past deliverance strengthens David's current plea, as he recalls God's faithfulness and power to transform his circumstances. For the believer, this is a reminder that God has the power to not only deliver from distress, but to also cause spiritual growth through the process. It is an invitation to trust in God's ability to turn moments of trial into opportunities for enlargement and strengthening. Have mercy upon me, and hear my prayer. As David concludes his plea, he asks for God's mercy. His request for mercy reflects his understanding of his own vulnerability and dependence on God. David does not come before God with a sense of entitlement, but with a humble heart, recognizing his need for divine compassion and intervention. This petition for mercy is an essential part of prayer for every believer, as it acknowledges that God's grace is the only foundation upon which our requests can be built. It is also a call to prayer, reminding us to approach God with humility and faith, trusting that He hears and responds to the cries of His people. In conclusion, this verse encapsulates a deep sense of trust in God's character. It reflects David's confidence in God's righteousness, mercy, and past faithfulness, which empower him to call upon the Lord in his time of distress. For the believer, it serves as a model for prayer, showing the importance of acknowledging God's righteousness, remembering His past deliverances, and humbly seeking His mercy in times of trouble. Just as God responded to David's plea, He remains faithful to hear and answer the prayers of those who trust in Him.